How's it going, guys? I'm here with beautiful Lightning Fast 5.0. I'm wearing my Shop Downshifts Mustang t-shirt because America and muscle cars. And what I'm gonna get into is a lot of fun stuff today. We got all interior parts that are no longer chrome. They're actually Cerakoted glossy black. And I also have some pieces that I've powder coated that I'll be installing as well. So let's get into it. So first off, I just want to let you guys know that I'm going to do my best to walk you through how I took these pieces apart, show you as I'm putting them back into the car, kind of how they came apart. I have some pictures of some stuff a little more complicated, kind of like this this button layout here. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and fumble with every single button, but I will show you guys kind of the order they go back together and also kind of how things come off. It's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of it is just kind of like look at how it goes together and it'll come apart the same way. So usually on the dash piece here, so what you're going to want to do is each one or each side is going to have this little panel. You can simply pull out on this, and now I always recommend that you have some non-marring style pry tools. You can probably pick these up from any Home Depot. Keep in mind that all that holds this on is little plastic clips, which can come off pretty easy, and they can also get lost. So keep track of your parts, have something that you can put your stuff on, and kind of pay attention to how things come apart because they go back together in the exact same way. So that's the first piece off. Next, there's going to be one 7mm that's going to hold this entire light housing on here. So what we're going to need is a 7mm. We got this loose. And keep track of all of our hardware, right? There's nothing better than losing stuff. I did take these off as well to get to a lot of other stuff. I'll explain as I go, but this piece is gonna kind of just pop off. Gonna just reach kind of from the edge right there and lift up as you do the other piece, and this piece will kind of just work its way off. Now there is a cord. You gotta kind of pinch. See that little tab right there? You gotta just kind of push on it and pull back. Sorry, my hand got in the way, but there's this piece all finished, right? Your car is gonna beep at you because it doesn't have something plugged into your lights, and it's gonna start whining at you, so don't worry about that. You can mitigate this by taking these two pieces and kind of pinching. Where is it? Oh, right there. See these? Just pinch down on those, and you can plug this back into the housing by just kind of pushing it out like that. And then on the other side, this will all come off, and you can tell your car to shut up. There you go. So, this is the ring that I took off of this particular piece. I got this off by actually just using a little thin razor blade and just getting behind it, and it popped right off. You'll see that it all has these little tabs, so just be careful. I did break one taking it off. All you're gonna do is line it up with all these little holes. That little ring is all back on nice and tight. Depending on if you have the digital dash or if you have the other dash, the standard, it's actually gonna be a little hard to get this whole steering wheel out of the way to get to this. The way that I did it was there's two little holes on the back side of the steering wheel. Hey, it's never a car project unless you made yourself bleed, right? Two little holes on the back of the steering wheel. You have to poke into these in order to get the entire airbag to release off of the vehicle. So what you have to do is reach back in there with something that's skinny. I personally used a coat hanger at one point, like a metal coat hanger. There's little clips, and what they look like is like the angle like this, and then circle around, and then it comes straight down. You're pushing on that clip, which is releasing this whole thing. It is a pain in the butt. You gotta feel, it's gonna be on this side, not towards us, but when you reach in, it's actually gonna feel kind of like it's over here, not this way. You'll see what I'm talking about. You'll feel it. You got to press in on it as you're kind of pulling back on the airbag. And I suggest, unless you're brave, disconnect your battery, which should be self-explanatory. It's a little 10mm bolt under your cover. Kind of what I used in the past. It's like a little baby tent stake or something. You could also use like an Allen key something that's long enough, you basically, when you reach back in there, you're gonna feel it as you poke through. It's gonna like kind of give you some resistance, and then you're gonna press on that. You notice what I'm talking about, because when I'm in this hole, do you see how this hits right there? That's what you're pushing on. If you pull it, like I said, farther to this side and this side, you're actually gonna reach in there and hit that clip, and that releases the entire airbag. Now, underneath here, you're gonna see that there is some little yellows, and they have little orange things on them. All you gotta do is just pry up on that, which isn't easy holding a phone, but I'm gonna pry up on those, and those will come off, and then you also have that one black clip. If you get the screwdriver under there and you just kind of rotate, see how it starts to come up? There you go. Now those will actually pop out now. All you gotta do is just pull up on them, like so, and boom. 1 and 2. Now your airbag is disconnected, but your horn is not. Your horn is this little piece. You'll notice it's got one little tab that you need to push down to right there, and that will pop out. Just push in on that little baby tab, and then your whole airbag's off. Just place that somewhere. Now that all this stuff is off, you're able to undo all the screws right there, and here. There is an order to them. These guys will go underneath. Same thing on this side. You disconnect these buttons and snap them into place by pushing on these tabs. Same thing for these guys. These just have 3 little screws on the back. Right there, and right there. So what I'm gonna do is pop those screws back in, and then we're gonna locate this back on the screws. Is a T10 Torx bit. So when you're screwing them back in, you'll notice there's smaller ones, and there's also some bigger ones. These bigger ones are meant to kind of hold the bigger surfaces like this, where they will bite down. And also, if you're getting confused on wires or anything, I mean, if you're completely replacing the steering wheel or something like that, then you'll kind of have to feed this harness in back there, but I don't think you guys are doing that, so I won't go into it. It'd be as simple as feeding this through. This little plug comes undone, and it'll be on the other side, and that's how you would access pulling off all these panels. Very simple. Start with the middle one, obviously, and then from there you would take off this piece, and it would disconnect on the other side. There would be some screws that hold it on right here, and this whole piece is all connected to that. So that's how you get that piece off. So we'll snap that back, the little surround back on. From the looks, I'm sure it's similar on either dash style that you have, but there's tabs. You need to remove those tabs carefully on either side, or otherwise you'll break it. Simply line it back up. And it should just simply pop right back into place. With that piece all snapped back in, you're good there, and you're good on the other side. So now we'll get back to the wheel. It would correspond with these 2 screws right there and right there. Let's put that back on. 2 screws back on, you'll just notice that there's some little biting tabs. They'll snap back into place just like that, and that'll keep that nice and firm up against the wheel. Plugging these back into place and lining them up with the same kind of corresponding tabs on the top. They will kind of just snap back into place. Keep in mind this little tab has to ride over top of this, kind of like that. Let's see, there's one tab and another one. Kind of line up. You can push them back together. This is a lot harder one-handed than you would believe. Then you'll notice right here, this fits over top of that. And when it's wider like that, you know to use the wider screws. And when it's skinnier like that, you'll notice that you use the skinnier screws. So we'll put a screw in this one right here, and come up, snapped in place up here. This pushed firmly. Big screw right here and a small screw right there. Repeat the process on the other side. Back on in the center. All of our screws are in place. Our steering wheel is back on nice and tight. And also we have all of our wires poking out. Let's put back on the airbag. So first, we're going to reattach your horn. Next, black into black spot, just like so. Push it back in. Pop down your little tab. And yellow on the yellow. And push back in, and there's your little tab. Now, when your airbag goes back in, here's the little spots that we were pushing on in order for it to bite. Just make sure the wires are kind of tucked back up in there nice. And then in order to get this back on, obviously your airbag should probably be detached, or your battery should, but you're probably going to honk your horn getting this back on. So the last thing to do would be to put back on the pony and your little emblem. Now, on the back side of these, there was a bunch of tabs. Each one of those tabs was like that wide. I had to cut each and every single one of them. So when you're trying to do this, in order to get this plastic piece off, you have to pry on a bunch of little tabs underneath your airbag to get these out. So don't just go prying and think that it'll come off. You'll probably break it. So I'm gonna actually put these back in with some glue, like some Loctite, and that'll actually permanently seal these guys back in here. So go back in. There's our beautiful steering wheel, all assembled. Just relocated the standard 2.7mm right here. Make sure all your clips are all back in place, and then we're just gonna pop that right back in because we are finished with everything that we are doing. This little ring and everything all on the wheel. So one more screw down here and we are set. Done. On these little lumbar pieces, those were chrome. I didn't care for it. Obviously I couldn't do just the little chrome surround, so I took the entire piece off. Simply pop that off with a razor blade, just very nice and smooth around the edge. Let's do the other side. Same thing. You'll notice there's little pins that will line up in there. You just want to make sure you get everything all lined up and just push it back in. Obviously you'll have lumbar support on this side, so you want to line up the tabs on here and just push that back into place. You'll kind of feel for it, and boom, there you go. Snap back in. In order to take that piece out, obviously you can see the plastic. I had to get in there a little bit, but if you pry on it, it'll come off. I took these off with a little razor blade as well. They just have little hooks, and they'll simply kind of line back up and just pop right in. Pop those out with a razor blade just coming from the edge right about here, and just pop them out. We'll do the other side now. Hook it and snap. In order to do the vents on this side, you're gonna need to reach in from the back, pull and pry gently and carefully. Carefully is understated, because you gotta sometimes really pull to get these things to come out, because that's the biggest, hardest clip. Two small ones on the bottom, not so hard. Set that piece aside. Same thing with this one. There is nothing that holds on this clip besides that. So all you gotta do is just reach around the edge right here and you can pull it. It sounds scary, but all it's doing is releasing all those clips along the edges in the back there. All these yellow guys. If you break them, you can go to Ford, and I'm sure you can buy them for incredibly cheap. Just do your best to be careful. So we'll set that out of the way, and next we're gonna install the vents back. You have one. Inside that is this little piece, and then the third one will sit over top of it and line up with your tabs like so. Notice when they're all lined up properly, they'll all just snap into place. Now, if you have a performance pack, obviously you're not going to have these two, which I got here. You would have 3 vents, so just snap them into place. Notice one side is a little wider than the other, and that's because they're going to fit in here like this. The top side is going to be a little bit more exposed than the other side, and you'll just kind of move them until they pop into place just like that. That's one. Remember, big side goes to the top, and then we'll snap that into place. Now with the vents back in place, if you have a performance pack, you'll be doing this little piece right here. This all comes apart. I'd be careful not to get dust behind that. Sits like that. This piece, notice the holes line up with there and there with these little screws. All you'll do is simply set that back on top of there and line up these screws with those. So it's 3 screws in place and all the tabs lined up. You're simply going to drop this back in there, lining it up with these tabs. And there are some more 10mm screws that'll go in each one of these holes here. So one, oops, excuse me, one. So screws go right below, not on here. 2, 3, and 4 screws in place. Our gauges are all done, but before we put it all back on, we need to remove this screw, this one, and 2 underneath a little plate. You can actually pry this little plate out. I have it holding my screws over here, but it looks like this. Some people call it the shaker plate because this is where it would say shaker audio, but this little plate will pop back out and you'll access those 2 screws where it's kind of like a bronze color there, and that will allow us to remove this and get those buttons installed. Screws off, you can simply start pulling on the top of this and it will start to come out. It does have some stuff behind it, but when you pull on this, just be careful because not everything is going to be disconnected like mine is. So underneath here, you know, look back there, you see the cigarette lighter or your 110 volts, and you also have a couple more little plugs that you need to unplug back here. So I'll show you what they look like. With this set aside, we can kind of see what we're unplugging. We got our cigarette style lighter, this bigger plug, smaller one, and also your USB. These little tabs, probably the hardest thing to unplug here. So I've had mine unplugged just simply for ease of taking it back off because I didn't want to do it more than once. These little tabs right there will actually catch. So you have to pull up on these in order to get that out. You have to push down on this tab in order to get this bigger one out. You have to push in on this tab in order to get this guy out. Keep in mind, you won't be able to start your car or anything because your push to start is actually right there. So don't have to roll up your windows or something for any reason while you're doing this. The last tab that I missed, you have to push in on this and it bends and pops out of this little hole right there. 8 Torx bit. It's going to be right here. Right here. You probably have a couple more right there and here. Keep your eye out. There's also probably a couple more that I've missed, but every little silver screw that holds this on is going to open up where you're actually into this board right here. So with the board completely out, you got these little rubber pieces. These will sit on the back of your buttons that you got. I have a photo that I'm going to show you guys on how I put these buttons back together and also kind of how they came apart. There's a 2-piece. There's one side and then there's another side, and it's kind of like a little puzzle. They only fit in one way. Same thing with these guys. This snaps off, these buttons come out, and you're basically left with just this shell, which you can see I've coated, as well as this, because this is actually chrome surround on the stock car. So switches, you can see this little button has kind of like a tab. That'll snap off pretty easy. Just lift up on that tab. Each one of these, you'll notice, has like kind of like a pivoting point that it's on, and there is corresponding little kind of toggle buttons in these 3, and then in this one is just up and down because that's your hazards. The engine start and stop button pries off right there and right here, and then becomes a separate piece, and those both slide into one socket. It's back in here. This will drop back in place right here, and this is kind of what it'll look like when you take it apart. You'll have your little rubber pieces over top, line it up with all your buttons, and that's kind of what it will go back as. Don't worry about these things going back into place. Ford gives you these little tabs right here, there, here, there, and so on and so forth that actually help you line all this stuff back up, including this. This piece will go on first, then its corresponding little rubber, then next your CD tray, and then this piece, and then this piece. Tune and volume buttons are 3 pieces. I'll show you a picture of how I took them apart. And what you're gonna do is there's little tracks in here that you're gonna line up with the corresponding little lines right there, here, and there. You're gonna put those right into the center. You're gonna push it down like this and get it to kind of just progressively push down until it snaps in place. Now we need to install some screws all over the place. So wherever you see some holes, there will be screws holding down this entire thing. With your board in place over that, lining up with some little tabs here, you're going to drop the back on, and then we'll put these little screws back into place. Now with all of your hardware back into place and all the appropriate holes, this guy is ready for one final piece. These guys, little pieces snapped out super easy. It's just simply a clip on either side. If you just pry on them just very lightly, they'll go in and they'll also come out the same way. So 1 and 2. Wiring snap back into place, a USB, 2 cords, and also the cigarette lighter. You are going to simply line this guy back up and push it back in there. As soon as we're done, we're going to actually secure it with our 4 7mm screws, top and bottom. Let's make sure not to forget our little shaker plate. Snap back into place and you are good to go. Now on to this piece, but first let's get this back on because we won't need it anymore. So just simply push that piece back on and then pop your little trim piece down here back on. As soon as that's back on, we are looking pretty good so far. Stick with me, guys, we're almost done. All we got is a little bit of shifter action. Take this guy off and get your cup holders back in, and then I need to clean this interior up because I haven't cared since it's been apart. So there is 2 screws, 1, 2, they're both 7mm, and on the other side 3 and 4. You'll have to take the little plates off. It's pretty easy to snap those off. You just simply pull on them, and then what you'll do is you're going to start from here, pull back, and just kind of keep on going. It's going to kind of be a pain in the butt, but you also got to have these pieces kind of loosened up. Don't mind my personal belongings. And once you pull up on these guys, this whole piece will all raise out. Gently from the back, see little blue clips right there and right there. All you're gonna do is just slowly pry from there forward, and it's gonna kind of sound bad, but it's not. It's just all those plastic clips releasing, and this whole piece will come off. A couple clips if you have a premium Mustang, in order to light up your, you see this little tab I'm pulling on, that will light up your cup holder. That'll give you a little bit more space when you unclip that one in order to get under here and unclip this guy as well, which is just another tab right there. And now you're free to pull this piece completely off and set it somewhere. Now keep in mind, if you're doing this and you're sending your pieces out, if these are not connected to your cup holder actually has this entire little control mechanism here that reads your key. So if you don't have this hooked up, you can't start your car. Switching back to our T15 Torx bit, we got a couple screws under here that we have to undo in order to get the cup holder piece out, or put it back in, as they say. And once you're all done with that, this is going to be the size of the piece. So it's not as tiny as you would think. A lot of people have asked me how I got this out. There's about 6 screws that hold this into place. So let's take this out. Now that your cup holder piece is off, simply removing these 6 screws, now you can subsequently put this right back into its place just by lining up all the tabs and pushing it all back down. Let's get this piece back on. This one is the hardest. I had to like hold the screw with one finger and push it and kind of hold it sideways or upside down in order to get that in. And we're only taking off these ones. We don't need to take off the upper guys at all, because this is now the result of putting that cup holder back on. So we're not quite done just yet. We need to get our e-brake boot back on there, which is going to require a little bit of gluing. I actually had to take my e-brake boot and cut it up in order to get it off of this, and also where it was zip tied before. So I'm gonna glue this guy on and we'll get back to it. A lot of glue later, and I don't even have a recording of this because it was so hard. This piece separates from this other piece. This has a little collar that goes on the back side. You can pry that off, and that's how you get your e-brake boot out. Now with this piece, the leather shift boot, or e-brake boot, actually, you have to start here, start pushing it down, and just glue as you go, and go all the way around. Definitely helps to have somebody to give you a second hand. I would suggest that. Now, as soon as I get this piece a little more secure, we'll put it back in the car. Tabs, they're very simple. I had them off so that I could powder coat. You just want to push those directly back on there. And now it's ready to drop right into this piece right here and clip into place. Now, that was a piece that I definitely wanted to make sure that I took a good care of, because that will actually break really easily. You want to make sure that you use that non-marring pry tool when you get underneath there, and just push it down and secure it really well. Into the car it goes. Bear with me, it's getting a little dark here, but sliding this back on, you're basically trying to make sure this is completely up and that this lines up with that. So, down at an angle is the best. And make sure it clips in the back as well. The e-brake handle, that kind of sucked. This little piece is basically threaded on the inside. It's going to catch this screw and kind of screw in there as it goes, and that applies pressure on that screw and keeps it biting the e-brake. Now when you put on the handle, that's a whole nother story. Actually, when you're taking it off, it's probably a lot worse than putting it on. You just keep on screwing and you'll eventually get there. Like that. Now there is a little tab that bites right there. That piece is probably the biggest pain in the ass in this entire e-brake. I'm gonna try to get that on there properly just by pushing all the way down, same way that I took it off. I just made sure that it was off of this one little piece that bites it right there, and that's gonna go into this hole. Now with that handle pushed all the way back and this rubber or leather kind of rolled in on itself and kind of tucked nice and neatly around that, with this all nice and screwed in there really tight like that, you can just keep on tightening. All you gotta do is just lift up and it'll apply. All I did was put the e-brake or the shifter knob all the way down to just kind of apply pressure, because it sticks into its little lockout collar there, and I want that glue to dry nice and neat. So that's all for the interior. Close that up and we're done with that section. By far the hardest. Put your last 7mm screws back in their homes. Snap that plate back on. which is a magnet, by the way, and it'll be pretty easy. I'll show you guys how that snaps in real quick. Probably the same way you guys snapped it out. If the magnet gets stuck, it's right there. You just need to grab it with some pliers off of the metal body right there, and all these plastic clips are simply gonna go right back into place, just like that. Done. So far, so good. Take a little break here, go get some food, and then we'll come back and do the doors. This little ring pops out pretty easy. It's just got some spots where it likes to bite. You simply push it down in there. This whole door assembly can be taken off from the other side. These buttons will come out. This is a piece of his chrome. I just popped these 4 little pieces off nice and carefully, something small like a razor blade. And then the buttons actually slide out first and sit into, let's see if I can do this. So it'll kind of sit in there like that, right? And then the buttons will kind of fall into place from there. And then the back of the housing of the button kind of falls in behind that. So this will plug in from the other side, and then of course it has a plug on it. I want to make sure that that plug gets unplugged. Just a simple little biter right there. And then this is going to be on your premium models, your lights and the little door handles. So those will all come out of this assembly. This little panel kind of goes behind it. There's actually this little screw that sits behind that when you're taking the door off. There's some screws that are on the underside of this panel. Well, 7mm. We're gonna take those off next, so then I can put the door handle back on from the other side and pop the back piece of the door handle back on and where these screws go. Excuse me. Right back on the handle here. And then obviously they're side specific. There will be screws that come out behind there and screw into these spots from there. So when you're taking it off, it's not as simple as just yanking it. You actually have to pull off this piece. I kind of started over here, and you just work your way like that, and then eventually all this stuff will come loose. But you of course have a plug that you need to undo from there, and then you can kind of reach in and get some of that stuff. But I suggest taking the whole thing off. I'll show you. So once you have that upper trim piece off, 10mm. Behind the little panel, 10mm, and on the bottom side, there's 7mm, somewhere 1 and 2. Take those out, and this whole door will just simply lift off as long as you have that plugs undone. Now, carefully, you just lift up, and this whole section should all come off. I can't do it really by holding a phone, but I'll show you. All right, there's little plastic retention clips that go in there. You just gotta basically pull from the back side right here all the way down, and then kind of get over here, and this whole thing will kind of just snap off. All right, now taking your handle with its little plate, you can kind of line it back up right there. And from the other side, we're gonna hit some screws and get this thing installed back in place. You'll find the screws on the back side. That little hole is 1. And on the other side, there's a couple more. They're kind of this bronze shape, so that's what we're taking out. I believe those are an 8mm. Sorry, 7mm. And when you're messing with these, you don't actually have to take these 2 outer ones off. It actually holds the entire metal piece that holds your handle in place. All you gotta do is take off that inner right there, and then this one on the other side, and that will take your entire door handle completely off. So that's all the chrome piece that you would need to delete. The door handle itself is the trickiest. If you take it to a place to get coated, you have to take that little spring out. This spring is actually going to wind up inside of here, and that is what I thought would be the biggest thing. It has to sit basically like that in these 2 little holes, and it's just a matter of getting the little cord on the door. This opens your door. You need to get that piece down inside that little channel, and that way whenever you pull this, it'll pull that cord, and then that spring is what is a detent that pushes it back in flat. So essentially what you're gonna do is just take this and wrap that little end around once and secure it into place. I'll show you what it looks like. Putting this in with that little end piece, the smaller one, in there. We're gonna take this piece and wrap it back and get it stuck right there. Now what I'm gonna do is take this and kind of stick it up in the spring to hold it, and I'm gonna take needle nose pliers and wrap it around once to there. That's probably gonna be your best course of action. And by the way, we actually have the handle into this whole assembly piece already, and that's how we're finding the little spots where they bite. This is a piece that stopped me for a little bit. That spring, you simply just push it down in there. You don't even have to wind it up. This is, I had to check when I went to this little event. I checked with a buddy and I looked in his car and opened the handle, and you can see the spring from the inside there. You simply just push the spring back down, it touches on that side, and then gets caught in there. And now that just simply gives you the springiness in the handle. Same thing on the other side. So this would be the passenger side, looking like this. The bottom goes to the left, the top goes to the right. Same thing on this one. The top goes to the left, the bottom goes to the right. And now we're able to put in these 10mm bolts and get these guys into the car, and then put our little panels back behind them. Drop into place like that. Then on the back side, if you have a premium, you're gonna take your light and just kind of line it up, and it'll clip into place there, just like that. Now your light's back in place. There is a plug for that to go into, which we still have this cable to figure out how to wrap it around here. So every time you pull on this handle, it'll actually open your door. So let's figure that out. Kind of bolt looking thing, that just holds this in place. And then this will actually hold it to the metal frame once we put in the 10mm. So those are hooked up. The best course of action to put these on, there's a little metal or a plastic thing here. You're just simply starting from this side. There's a little hook. Just hook it around there, and then you're gonna kind of lift up on the door a little bit, let it sit on that kind of sill, and then when you push, all those clips will all take the door into its original spot. So push it into place, and then we got some bolts to secure it. Now with this little wire hooked up for your window switch, we have a 10mm that needs to go here, 10mm for here, 2 7s on the bottom, and then you can clip this guy down and you're finished. Now that your 7mm on the bottom are in place, your 10mm behind here, 10mm here, simply open this up, and you're gonna pop back in this little panel here, and that is gonna cover that beautiful little spot. Our lock and unlock work, and also our light underneath there should as well. We are done with passenger side. Now just repeat that on the other side. Oh, these little rings, I actually had to get behind the door. You're gonna have to clean out those little channels with like a razor blade, and then I'm just gonna simply put a little bit of epoxy that we used on the steering wheel back here just to hold those in place. All right, so after checking fitment and everything and putting stuff together, I realized that each one of these buttons was kind of getting a little bit stuck. The entire piece was powder coated or Cerakoted, because just the little round pieces here, this is all chrome. So I gave them the entire piece. I haven't had any issues with these guys, but as far as buttons, I actually got stuck with my heated seat on at one point. Obviously this isn't an issue if you have a standard Mustang and not a premium, but what I would suggest is I actually took each one of these little buttons and I took a little piece of sandpaper and I went in each one of these grooves, all 4, and then I popped the button in and just make sure that it fit. Now, when you're doing this, I actually wanted to go over this with you guys. See how it has this little top piece? It's like an angle. You know that angle is at the top. So that's kind of how I fit together everything piece by piece. So this piece, angled at the top, really skinny. It's gonna fit right in that one. Same thing with this one. It's angled, it's a little bit fatter. This is on that side, and the light is on the other side. So you can kind of piece it together. I'll show you a picture, kind of what I'm talking about there. But each one of these buttons should be able to move around in here pretty freely, or otherwise you're going to run into issues. Now, as far as I took these apart, each one has these own little clips, like these little clip pieces. And you'll see that there's holes that you can reach in to take these pieces off. Now, you're reaching in and basically pushing one and then the other. And if you just apply a little bit of pressure with like a little baby screwdriver kit, like a flat head screwdriver for I don't know, I'm using for like your sunglasses or something like that. That's kind of what I did. A little micro screwdriver kit, was able to pop all these guys out. Just be aware there may be some sort of fitment issue if you powder coat the entire thing. So just a little heads up on that. Now let's get this back together and back. Now, I don't know how in depth you guys want to go, but if you have a premium, you have the metal pedals. Those are silver. So these don't look the best. I probably could have done a better job on it, and you probably could too. But you pry the metal piece off. Then you have to cut these pieces. So you take a razor blade underneath each one of them, and that allows you to pull this and separate it off. I did it on both of these. This is plastic. I actually had to use a heat gun in order to take the metal off of this. It doesn't look ideal, but at least it's not chrome, so I'm gonna go with it. Let me know if you guys do anything better than that. I'd be happy to see if someone has a better result. So I actually bought a dead pedal from American Muscle to kind of complete that look when it was chrome. So I got those powder coated, not Cerakoted, because they are metal. So I installed all three of the pedals, and now the bottom piece is complete. We are all done. Everything in this interior that was chrome is no longer chrome. I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that you guys like the results. It's definitely been a project. Took a long time to get these things powder coated, Cerakoted, and I've just been kind of sitting on hold, but I would say that I'm incredibly happy with the results. And it's almost weird to see your car at night because you're used to some sort of reflection, especially with me because I have these beautiful little blue lights here that shine down on everything chrome. But with that, I mean, you guys just let me know if this video was helpful. If you'd like to see more stuff like this, I'd be happy to continue to share kind of the projects and things that I do. And if you guys enjoyed this and think maybe I should start my own YouTube channel, definitely let me know, because I've been considering it for some time, and I think I might have a good following. So thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to doing the next project with you. They were chrome originally, and decided how could I powder coat or Cerakote these. It's actually just a little sticker on the top of this, so I took it off, had them coat those, and then I just painted a little bit of blue behind the pony. Turned out pretty cool. So that's one piece that little extreme tiny details that people will notice. Now with the ponies, I actually didn't go over that. You can reach a tiny little screwdriver, like one of the micro ones that we used on the center buttons for like your AC controls, heated and cooled seats and whatnot. I actually just fit one behind here, so you don't actually have to take your wheel off in order to get this off. When you pop that, there is a little like clip right here, and on the back side, don't try and pry this pony out from the front because you'll break it. But if you get in there, you can actually push the pony out on the other side with that screwdriver. Just by pushing backwards on it, it'll pop right out. So if you wanted to black those out too, that's definitely an option.